Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. Now, each week we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry. Now, today we're lucky enough to have an amazing guest joining us, Dave Connors, founder and CEO of distriBind's. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Barry. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. How about you?
Not too bad. Thank you. So first of all, just want to thank you for taking time of your day to speak with us. Really appreciate it. So as normal, let's start by getting to know a little bit about yourself. Would you mind just telling us about you and the company you work at?
Yeah, so the two are kind of very intertwined. So I've worked only in the insurance industry for about 21, 22 years. That's all kind of split between what might be termed the kind of business side as a insurance technician, underwriting technician, claims, and then working for some consultancy in kind of business analysis, and then moving into kind of working for vendors in kind of functional design and innovation. And distriBind is a company that is curing the insurance industry of its spreadsheet addiction with a digital data exchange and workbench for delegated authority, which is where insurers will give agents permission to sell policies on their behalf. They need to then tell the insurers what they've sold, what premium there is, what claims there is. It's a very, very spreadsheet heavy process. I have first-hand experience of that from the kind of first half of my career and decided it was a problem that needed solving.
Was it something that you always wanted to do, or did you kind of just stumble into it?
I mean, nobody ever wanted to work in insurance, I don't think. So, I mean, that side of it really stumbled into. And then I think this as well, really, if you went back 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said I was a massively entrepreneurial person. I was ambitious, but not necessarily saw that as starting my own business. But I just sort of felt that my career was fairly unique in having kind of quite in-depth insight of both sides of the coin. I knew there was this particular problem that I said I had first-hand experience of, and there solutions out there, the legacy solutions, really not attacking the problem properly, certainly not solving the problem, and a feeling that it needed to be done differently and it could be done differently. And eventually, that realization that you could live with yourself if you tried and failed, but you couldn't live with yourself if you didn't try and somebody else did it.
Good words of advice there. So how did distriBind begin, and what were the initial challenges?
I mean, it began really, with several years of me just kind of thinking through the idea and the problem and from the various different angles and how did it need to be solved? What was it? And the fundamental problem is one of efficiency and visibility. If we're at the beginning of March today, the 4th of March, the insurers won't yet know what their agents sold throughout February, what premiums they paid in February, what claims there were in February. So that's, a systemic risk right away. The spreadsheets are very manual for the agents to produce, incredibly manual for the insurers to process. So it was really thinking about that problem and actually what would solve that problem. And I think where we do things differently is we started from a process of what should it look like and then worked back to where we are. Whereas I think a lot of people have kind of dealt thinking about where we are now and how we could move that forward. So I think that gave us a different insight of where we wanted to go. And then it was all about actually getting the funding to do it. And we were fortunate to get an Innovate UK grant at the end of 2018 into 2019 that allowed us to actually start building the product and got some angel investment off the back of that. And then, the real struggle was getting customers. The insurance industry is incredibly conservative, incredibly risk averse. I think if I'd been given money every time I had the conversation that someone said, this is a great idea, sounds awesome, we won't be first, I could have retired then and not even built the product. So that was very difficult. We eventually, thankfully, managed to overcome that. And in fact, we got, much like a London bus, we got 2 customers on the same day, which was wonderful back in, I think, July 21. And then, from there, the challenge remains one of delivery of the product and making sure that it's doing what our customers need alongside, the funding. We've never taken any institutional investment. We've been mostly over the last 18 months driven by revenue, which is great. But it also, organic growth is tough, especially when you're a small company dealing with large kind of global insurers and their expectations and their scale versus ours, really. So it's kind of a never-ending fight to kind of just deliver that and make sure the product is doing what we say it does, and that the clients are happy.
So it's a challenging market out there. How does your company, distriBind, stand out from its competitors?
I think the biggest way is that really we are probably the first next generation tool. Most of the competitors out there are very legacy. They're very spreadsheet oriented still, whereas we obviously we process spreadsheets and we process them very well, but we process data in real time via API, we process XML, etc. So that kind of ability to move the formats forward and deal with different formats and variants definitely sets us apart. I think the level of automation that we could do really sets us apart. So a good example of that would be when these spreadsheets come into the insurer, and before they can even load that spreadsheet into one of the kind of legacy systems, their technicians will need to do a lot of manual manipulation of that spreadsheet, removing duplicate columns, subtotal rows, other non-data rows, that kind of thing. And a couple of years ago, we were going through an accelerator in the Lloyd's lab, and one of the companies that worked with us took us through the process. This is everything we'd have to do. And their technician said, a bad one would take her 45 minutes of manipulation before she could load it into that system. For us, that's zero. We process the same spreadsheet. It's called a bordereau. We process that bordereau with zero manual manipulation. And, topically, last week was the leap day, the 29th of February. So an extra day in the year. With distriBind, you only have to process 11 spreadsheets and you've saved a whole working day, because it's 45 minutes per spreadsheet. So it's that level. And I said right at the beginning about efficiency and visibility. We're able to really give our clients massive efficiency, but also visibility. If you consider those spreadsheets hundreds of columns wide, hundreds, if not thousands of rows long, and actually being able to see an individual issue or understand the risk and how that risk has moved and evolved over time, when it might be the original risk and then a change to that risk might come in a spreadsheet 6 months later. That visibility is very difficult, and we give all of that visibility with much, much less manual effort.
How does your company ensure data security and privacy?
A number of ways. We obviously do certain things within our kind of infrastructure and architecture. So our databases are all secured from the public internet, standard firewalls, etc., and everything that would be done through. We host everything in the Azure cloud, and there's a lot of security that comes kind of out of the box for that. And then within the kind of product design as well, in terms of tenant separation, we can have isolated environments or keep things in a multi-tenant environment, but it's still separated by the tenant ID, user roles, user permissions, all of that sort of stuff that is standard. We also have a data model that by default doesn't store any PII data. So if a client requires us to store PII data, that's kind of noted and configured, and then we have extra security around that as well. So, security is something that is incredibly serious. I mean, we would take it seriously anyway, but we're forced to by our clients. If you think about the kind of the due diligence processes that we have to follow to secure a client, huge amounts of that are about information security, data security, etc.
Yeah, it is very common. And also, I think any business, regardless of what kind of business, I think data security and privacy is probably up there with one of the top 2 or 3 concerns that they have.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a bit about the initial challenges, your competitors, and the data security and privacy scene. So what about the future for distriBind? What is the future in terms of product development?
In the short term, we're looking to do as much as we can about the kind of to speed up and automate as far as we possibly can the initial setup and configuration of the product, because obviously there's a kind of one-off project effort to implement, whether that's migrating old data, setting up reference data, setting up the configuration models so we know how to process a particular spreadsheet or types of spreadsheet. We have stuff in our system that allows us to handle variants. So a single field might be called multiple different things across different spreadsheets, but we handle all that very elegantly. So that kind of bit needs a bit of setup. And that's something that it's still relatively fast today, but it's also relatively manual today. And we've worked on a few things recently that will speed that up. So we currently have something in testing that allows us to take a spreadsheet that we've never seen before and have no context about, and have a configuration model ready and be able to load that spreadsheet and process that spreadsheet in under 3 minutes from the first time we saw that spreadsheet. So that's very exciting. When we roll that out, that'll be kind of, I think in our production by the end of the month. We have a few other things that we're doing. That's our kind of real short term. A few other things that we're looking to do around the kind of general workflow of the system to kind of support kind of some additional workflow that we've seen our clients request. So that's kind of a short-term thing. I think more as a company and kind of more strategically, we're focusing heavily on expansion. So we currently have clients across the UK, Europe, the US, and the Cayman Islands. We're specifically targeting the US. It's where the biggest single market for this type of business. We have say one client, one of our largest client isn't an American company, but they have a large American presence, and we're currently in discussions with them about kind of rolling out there and implementing the product there. So yeah, that's kind of a big focus for us.
Sounds like you've got a lot of exciting things coming up in the near future. How does distriBind leverage machine learning algorithms to automate processes within the insurance industry?
The main use of machine learning within the platform is a predictive feature that we have. So all of these agreements, or nearly all of these agreements between an insurer and the agent, will be limited by the total amount of premium that the agent can sell. And obviously, it's important to the insurer to understand, if they've given permission or capacity to potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of agents in 1 year, and it's important for them that they know, one, nobody is going to go over their limit, but also actually, if you've granted someone 10 million and they're only going to write 3 million, you've got 7 million of available capacity that you've wasted effectively. And this is very, very important for the insurers in terms of their kind of regulatory solvency requirements, in terms of their own kind of reinsurances that they will have, etc. So we have a machine learning algorithm that will be able to predict across all of those agreements where that one will end up. So we'll look at the account history of that and similar agreements and go, okay, based on what they've already sold this year, they're going to end up here or not, and give the insurer very early insight into how that is going to perform, so they can actually monitor and manage their capital allocation more efficiently. That's the primary use. Again, it is part of our roadmap to extend that further, both in terms of kind of how we can have something similar going with claims, how we can use kind of word vectors, etc., to manage variants additionally. So our ingestion algorithms today are very sophisticated, very flexible, but they don't actually utilize any machine learning because it's based off very, very good design. Which sounds a little immodest, but it is, it's based off design. It's something that we kind of very proud of, I think. But I think we can extend it further using machine learning and make it even better. And that's another part of our roadmap.
Perfect. And what tech trends are catching your attention within the industry presently? And what are the driving factors behind their significance?
I mean, obviously, the big one is AI, and particularly generative AI at the moment. I think largely it's still lacking a definite killer use case or killer app. I think there's some interesting research going out there on different things. We're looking at some things as well of like how we might leverage that. But I think there isn't a definite, to my mind anyway, there isn't a definite use case. I do know some internal use cases, I think, that larger companies are finding where it might be leveraged by senior executives, where effectively, rather than them having to read the report, they can more just like say, is there anything here I need to be aware of? That kind of thing. But I'm yet to really be entirely convinced that there is a definite kind of customer facing killer app for it yet. I think if you go back a few years in insurance, we were still talking a lot about AI. It was nearly always a chatbot. I think the chat GPT and generative AI has probably exacerbated that more than anything, made them maybe slightly better. But I still don't think that's not going to transform the industry. There needs to be something else, and I'm sure it will come, but I haven't seen it yet.
How does distriBind engage with insurance clients to understand their specific needs and challenges before implementing a solution?
So, I mean, that all starts pretty much from the very first conversation we have with them, in terms of like the discovery process. We obviously have because what we do is quite focused and quite niche, there's always a lot of similarity in like the base problem is one of data exchange, efficiency, and visibility. But then it becomes very clear that the difference, like this, the surface similarity always has underlying differences, in the sense of, some of our customers have a kind of dedicated center of excellence for this thing, and you will speak to their teams, and their teams know it like the back of their hand, and they're really, really switched on, and these are our problems, and it's here, and it's this, and it's that. Others are less so, that they don't really have a focused team, and then getting to the crux of information can be a little bit harder. But we try to do that through kind of clear communication and an iterative process. So what we don't do is give our clients a 12, 18-month project before they can use the system. We try to get contracts live ASAP. So that will be, once I think we've identified, yes, they have the problem, they want to use us, we can do this. Then typically our aim will be to help them identify some key contracts that they could get live with us quickly and get quick benefit from. And then we aim to have that first contract live in a matter of weeks, and then iterate out from that. So that's generally the process that we will follow, because it enables you to get quick wins, but it also means quick failure doesn't hurt. If that first iteration isn't quite right and it isn't quite what they needed, or there's some whether it's a bug or whether it's just something wasn't configured right and a particular figure isn't coming out, or particular information, you know it quickly, but you also know it quickly before they're on the hook for a lot of money, and you can iterate it quickly and fix it and still get them live, rather than it's months down the line, they've paid you an awful lot of money, there's a bunch of rounds of testing, and then they go, damn it, this bit doesn't work. That never works. I've seen that fail in my previous life a number of times when you take that kind of big bang approach. So we purposely avoid that.
And since we're talking about solutions, in what way does a solution adapt to the unique requirements and workflows of different insurance clients, ensuring a customized and tailored approach?
But that's a great question, and it really it's just inherent in the way we've designed the product. So we think we're experts in that bit of taking this kind of data, figuring out what it is, figuring out what's right, what's wrong, and visualizing that to the client. But we aren't experts in the perfect workflow for every single one, because, like I've said, they're all different. They have different structures, different setups. So that's what we do, is that we've built a system that is purposely flexible on how data comes in, how data goes out, and what you can do in the middle. so that we can then figure out the workflow. So I give you a few examples of that. Is, we have clients that will take the data in, and it will all be spreadsheets, and they won't move data forward if there's errors. They'll leave it there until the errors get resolved, and then they'll move data forward. We have other clients who, with that data in the middle, they can separate out the errors and move all the good data forward, and they will. Some of them will kind of approve errors because they, as long as they're not serious errors, they'll just kind of approve it and let it go. That kind of stuff. That's what we've done, is built a solution that doesn't impose any real restraints on you. There are a few that are needed to maintain the data integrity of the system itself, but purposely few. And I think, again, that is something that really sets us apart. So, we know some of the other, or at least one of the other solutions out there. If you load a spreadsheet, and let's say, you've got 100 rows, it will stop at the first error and say, you've got an error on line 5, column 10. And then you fix it, and then it'll go, oh, you've got an error on line 7 now. And it's like, how is that a solution? It's not a solution. We process everything, we tell you what's in it, show you what's in it, and then it's down to you. Do you stop there and get every single thing fixed? Or do you move forward, review certain things, maybe you want to approve certain things, reject certain things, however you do it, but everything is tied together, and you have that complete flexibility to work with us to decide your best flow.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So it sounds like you had quite an amazing journey. But if you were to look back on that and think to yourself, what was the most valuable lesson that you learned along the way? What would you say that was?
Interestingly, I think it's one that has come out a little bit more recently with a few different clients, actually, is that I think people generally care a bit less about some of it than I thought they did. In terms of some of the validations and the errors, and it's something we've had to change in the system to make it even more flexible, is that, they almost kind of, some of the stuff that was baked in out the box in terms of the error validation, they're like, well, I don't care about that. I don't want to see that. So we have to had to make it more flexible to switch certain validations off. That we thought, like, well, that will just be baked in because everyone wants that, but they don't. And I think that's the lesson. I thought we had it in the system to a fair extent anyway, of everything I just said. Like, we aren't the experts in the process, but I thought there were a few more, shall we say, fundamentals that everyone cared about. But it turns out not. And I'm not saying that in any form of a way of like criticism of like, bloody hell, they should care about that. Why don't they care about that? But it just goes to show like how different everything is, and how every case is, and how so much of the insurance industry, and particularly the London market and the Lloyd's and London markets, focus on one size fits all, and it just does not work. And I think for us to have seen that, when we've taken a purposely different approach on being flexible, to still say actually you weren't quite flexible enough, was a real insight.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And we are slightly running nearly late for time. So just one more question, if I may.
I said I rambled, didn't I?
No, you did ramble. It was actually pretty good. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing that. So what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? So maybe someone who's looking to get their feet wet, but maybe has a few doubts. What would you say to someone like that?
I honestly don't know if I'm the best person to give this advice because of, like I said, I didn't see myself as particularly entrepreneurial. But I think coming from my experience and my particularly the kind of hard times that we had in the last sort of 4 to 5 years, I would say the thing is you have to believe in the problem. I mean, I have met people who have said like, oh, I'd love to run my own business, but I don't know what. And I would say, like, don't do that then, because there really have been times where the only thing that kind of allowed me to face the next day was the 100% belief that this was a real problem that had to be fixed, that would be fixed, and we were doing it right. And I think if there was any doubt in my mind that this was a real problem, and it was more something that a problem we'd invented to try to kind of do something, then I think that would have been very, very hard. But that's obviously a very kind of personal thing. It may not be the same for everyone. Other people may go like, no, I would still fight. I could still do it. I don't know. But I think for me personally, it would have been very, very hard at certain times, but for the complete belief that this was a real problem that had to be fixed.
Great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, Dave, I just want to thank you again for talking with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
But thank you, Barry. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. That was Dave Connors, founder and CEO of distriBind's.